Welcome to RoadTrip WDW. I am your host, Rebecca Schlau. Welcome to the very first episode. Today we're going to be discussing how to plan your Disney World vacation. As a seasoned Disney road tripper myself, I hope to make your vacation planning just a little bit easier. So you've decided to take a trip to Disney World. That is very exciting, and if you haven't already noticed, it can be very overwhelming. If you've never been to Disney World, or you're going for the first time in several years, it can be pretty intimidating to try to plan a trip now. There have been a lot of changes to Disney World over the last decade. If you haven't been keeping track, it's kind of hard to know how to plan, where to start, and what to do. Let's start by talking about what Disney World is and what it means when you say you're going to take a trip to Disney World. Disney World is not just one theme park. It's practically a little city. Disney World is 40 square miles. It has 4 theme parks, 2 water parks, 4 golf courses, and 2 mini golf courses. It is huge. And if you're looking for a place to stay, they got you covered. They got about 20 different resorts. That's not including the villas at some of these resorts, and several hotels that are on property but aren't technically owned by Disney. Now, when you stay inside of Walt Disney World, you have free access to the resort buses. These buses run like major metropolitan areas. The buses will pick you up and drop you off wherever you need to go around Disney World Resort, which this is a wonderful and very brilliant strategy for Disney because it keeps people on property. And when you're on property, you spend money. So they are very heavily invested on getting you to and from where you need to go at Disney World. And while most people usually just take the free provided buses, some people drive their own cars and prefer driving your cars to the different theme parks around Walt Disney World and just parking in their parking lots. Other people these days are hiring out Ubers, Lyfts, and what they call minivans, which are technically just the Disney version of Uber. And if you're coming from the airport, you will take Disney's Magical Express. But since this show isn't going to address much about flying or airlines, you'll just have to look elsewhere for more information on the Magical Express and getting to and from an airport. When you're planning your trip, it's easiest to look at your trip planning in terms of different steps. While these steps don't have to be exactly in this order, this is just how I like to look at them. The first step will be to ask everybody that's going and yourself, what do you actually want to get out of this trip? The second will be to review your budget. And third will be when do you want to go and how long do you want to stay? The fourth step will be to pick out a hotel. The fifth step is to review dining and think about dining reservations. The sixth step is to look at park tickets and purchase your park tickets. And last, think of the extras that you may want to add to your trip. Keep in mind throughout this whole planning process that if you are feeling completely overwhelmed to the point where you are reconsidering even taking a Disney World vacation, feel free to just go ahead and hire a travel agent to do all the legwork for you. So let's go back and dive straight into step 1. Go ahead and ask your partner or your spouse and your kids what they want to get out of a Disney World vacation. If you're first timers, you may not even know what you want to get out of this vacation because you may not even realize how much there is to do. But it's good to get an idea of what everyone thinks they want to do ahead of time. Now let's look at your budget. How much money do you want to spend versus how much can you stretch versus how much do you think you need to save? Disney isn't cheap. You may already know that, but Disney World is not cheap. And even when you're there, they nickel and dime you at every corner. So you need to be prepared for all of that. There's a lot of factors that go into determining how much you need to save and how much you're going to spend. A lot of things can affect the cost. How long you're going to stay in your hotel, how many days worth of park tickets do you need, and what sort of dining options you're going to choose. And don't forget about souvenirs and little knickknacks that you're going to pick up along the way. For a week-long Disney trip as a family of 4, you may spend close to, let's say, $5,000. Sure, that number can be adjusted and there's different ways to save, and I'm going to have an episode specifically addressing all the ways you can save money when you plan your trip. Now think about when you want to go and when you can go to Disney World. A lot of people choose to go when school is out of session, obviously because the kids are out of school and they don't get counted as absent. So summers are popular times, but there are other times of the year. For instance, the week of Thanksgiving and closer to Christmas. From what I hear, the crowds are crazy. Now, with good planning, crowds don't always have to hinder you, but for some people, they prefer not to go when the parks are going to be absolutely the most crowded, because this will make it difficult to get on your favorite rides and attractions. Spring break is another heavier time where you'll see a lot of crowds. There's also various times throughout the year where there's festivals or cheerleading competitions, marathons, and special events. All of these different things can affect the crowd calendars. I will give you some tips on how to check the crowd calendars. For us, it's simple. We go in the summer. However, we do know it's going to be hot. We do know it's going to be slightly heavier crowds, although from what I'm hearing, the crowds really aren't as bad in the summer as they used to be back when I was younger. When we first started going back to Disney World as adults, taking our kids, we started with shorter trips and then slowly threw in extra days each time we went back. So I'm pretty sure the first time we went as adults with our first daughter, it was literally for one day. That trip was such a tease. So the next year we came back, we splurged and stayed, I think, for 3 or 4 nights. The next year I realized that did not suffice and didn't really scratch my itch good enough. So I think we stayed closer to a week. At this point in time, we usually book 8 days at Disney World. We also usually throw in a few extra days if we can get down soon enough. But keep in mind, for your first trip, you may not have a whole week. You may just have 4 nights, 5 nights. No matter how many nights you're able to go, there's going to be a lot of fun to be had. The more you experience Disney and learn about it and figure out the system, I think it makes you want to stay longer. So I would plan to stay at least 5 nights if you can for your first time visit. And if you're a road tripper like me, if we planned 5 days, for us living in Central Arkansas, that actually adds on a few extra days to our trip. So we always have to keep in mind of that time it takes just to get down there. And if you've probably guessed, I will have another podcast episode giving you some road trip tips, since that's all I do. I don't fly. I don't get there any other way except driving in my minivan. For me, I grew up going on road trips, so there's a lot of nostalgia to packing up the car, and it was always a lot of fun for me as a kid. So I don't mind the road trips. I think it's just part of the experience and part of the fun. My kids love it because I always let them eat a bunch of junk food on the way and immerse themselves in technology and their phones and iPads and DVDs. So it can be a really fun part of the vacation too. Now that's the road trip down. The road trip back, of course, not as fun and not as magical. Definitely kind of sad. All right, step number 4, my favorite. It is picking out your Disney World hotel. Now, guys, There are so many options, and there's so much to explore. It seems like every hotel on Disney World property is unique and has a lot to offer. When you're exploring your options, you will hear it come up. Do you want to stay on property or off property? For your first visit, this should be on property. You want to stay on site. There are just so many perks to staying on site. I just don't recommend staying off property for your first time visit. Now later, once you become a bit more seasoned, there are going to be some great off property hotels. But for your first time and to get all the benefits and amenities that Disney World has to offer, definitely choose somewhere on site. There are 3 classes of hotels for all budgets. The first type of hotel is going to be your budget hotels. These are called your value resorts. Now, value resorts are going to be probably priced, they say, at like starting at $99 a night. Well, that's not always the case. A lot of times it's going to be closer to $120, $150 a night. So don't let that fool you. But these are going to be the cheaper ones. But the value resorts are great. Don't let that scare you away. They're usually highly themed. They're going to have great food. They're usually going to have a great pool or several pools. The value resorts are considered more like motels. The entry into your rooms are external, so you're walking outside and you're getting into your rooms externally. Whereas like a hotel, you'd be going inside the hotel and your room would be like down a hallway. I've always had a great time at the value resorts. There's no shame in my game. I like to save money. One of the best advantages to stay in at a value resort, though, is saving mega bucks. And a lot of people say that since you're at Disney World, you're not really going to be staying in your room that much anyway, so why bother paying more? The next tier of hotels is the moderates. Now, these are not values, nor are they deluxes. They are kind of in between. They're going to have more amenities and nice things. Also, you're going to start seeing slides at the swimming pools, which is very good for kids like mine who adore riding slides over and over and over again. Moderate prices are probably going to run somewhere between $200 to $350 a night. The next category of hotels are your deluxes. Now, these are the big fancy hotels with the very nice amenities and also that hefty price tag. You'd be lucky to find anything under $400 a night at any given time for even the most standard of rooms. The rooms here can cost, like I said, anywhere between $400 well above $1,000 a night, depending on the type of room and where you stay at. The deluxe resorts are known for very nice bathroom amenities, some extras, like instead of just shampoo and conditioner, you might get some mouthwash or a sewing kit. Last time we stayed at a deluxe, we got a little tube of sunscreen and after sun gel, really nice extras that we normally wouldn't get. We also had access to robes for a little bit more luxurious of a feel. At the deluxe resorts, you're also going to see some of the most popular and hard to get dining reservations. The deluxe hotels have great restaurants. They have good fast food sort of restaurants, and they have good fancy restaurants, and they have good just table service restaurants. They're known for good food, nice amenities, big luxurious pools, and very nice slides, splashy areas, lots of extra fun. You're going to have more character interactions at your deluxe resorts. You're going to have more fun things to do and more options. Some of them have better access to nightlife and bars and fun things like that. But one of the best things about a lot of these deluxe resorts is their proximity to the theme parks. And this really matters because in order to get around Disney World, you're not walking from place to place to place usually. Usually you catch a bus. And if you are a parent with a big old double stroller like me, folding up that monstrosity of a stroller is a real pain. Also, you have to wait for buses, and you typically spend a lot of time catching buses, getting on buses, loading on buses, riding on buses. So to avoid that, a lot of times you could stay at a deluxe resort and you can either walk, or you can maybe hop on a monorail or a ferry and get there a lot quicker, at a lot more ease, a lot more convenience. So location is a huge factor in making the resorts considered deluxe. Next in the planning process is just to do a review and scour the internet for information on the dining options at Disney World. Now, I'm not saying you have to make reservations at this step in the planning process, but I do want you to do your research, because there's lots of different restaurants, various price ranges, and some are very, very fancy, and some are just casual, quick, or some are more like little food trucks or food stands. But I do want you to look at your dining options, because once you research some things, you may find that there are some must-dos on your park touring plans. And if that's the case, you want to have a bit of an idea about those sorts of extra experiences, extra dining experiences, before you purchase your park tickets, because this may make all the difference in the type of tickets that you buy. If you recall earlier, I mentioned something called Park Hopper, and that gives you the access to go to more than one park at any given day. And if you do have Park Hopper tickets, then you have a lot more flexibility at where you're going to eat on any given park day. So you could start off eating lunch in the Magic Kingdom, and then you could, essentially eat dinner at Epcot. You don't have to be confined to just one park a day. So that's why just having a little review over your dining options and doing some research may be a good idea before you actually purchase your park tickets. Now it's time to purchase your park tickets, though. I always tell people to go to undercovertourist.com. I don't work for them. I don't promote them for any sort of reason, except that's where I like to buy my park tickets, because it saves me money. And once you buy your park tickets, you get the ticket numbers on the back of those cards, and you'll plug them into your My Disney Experience application. If you haven't already downloaded that application, it's really super easy. You just download it, make an account. You're going to need to remember your name and password when you do sign on to the regular Disney World site, but the My Disney Experience account will be something that you use all the time when you are actually in Disney World. Now, if you're like me, you're going to be skeptical that you're actually saving money going to a third-party site. And the only third-party site I actually recommend will be Undercover Tourist. If you're not going to buy from them, then just buy directly from Disney. But if you actually compare and contrast and look at your hotel room and look at the tickets you would buy, and then look at your hotel room costs versus tickets you would buy from Undercover Tourist, add it together, you're going to get a cheaper cost by buying them individually rather than grouping them together as a package, or at least that's how it's always worked for me. So once you look at the tickets, you will notice that the first 2 to 4 days are going to be the most expensive. After you add your 5th, 6th, 7th plus day, the costs don't vary as much, but in the first few days, those extra days are hundreds of extra dollars, whereas let's say if you're staying for 8 days or 9 days, just adding an extra day to that would cost maybe $25 or something pretty minor compared to like $100. By this point, I hope you have a good idea of the theme parks you want to attend, and I hope you've had a chance to do a little research on the water parks. Because if you do want to go to a water park, you're going to want to buy the Park Hopper Plus package. If you don't want to go to water parks and just don't really seem that interested, skip it and save yourself some money. I've reached this extreme point in my Disney obsession that I like to have all my options open. So I usually go ahead and buy the Park Hopper Plus, although I know we will more than likely go to the water parks. I still just like having all my options. I do not like to feel restricted. If I want to go to every single theme park in one day, I want to be able to do it. And I also want to be able to go to the water parks and the theme parks and maybe play a little round of mini golf. And I don't want to feel limited or restricted. So for me, paying extra money for these tickets is well worth the stress that it may cause to kind of worry about it. But I would like to preface, when I first started going to Disney World, my budget was a lot tighter and my finances were very limited. So it wouldn't have necessarily been an option for my first few visits. The next step in planning is adding the bonus activities and events to the vacation. And this is a great time to go back and revisit the first step, is what do you want to get out of the vacation? What do you want to get out of this trip? And a lot of times you just want to make your family happy. So this is a great time to look at everyone's individual interests in order to help pick out which activities you want to do. So extras could include making a point to meet specific characters or go to certain character events such as the Star Wars parade, meeting the characters from Star Wars. For us, when my oldest daughter was young, she loved Sophia the First and all the Disney Junior characters, so we made a point to go to a character meal which featured all of those. Now that my kids are a little bit older and have a pretty good sense of humor for 5 and 7-year-olds, we do try to add some things that are kind of funny for them. So watching some of the performers at the boardwalk or Hoop-de-Doo musical review, those are all extra options that I might add to my vacation just to make it a little bit more fun for them. There's also different experiences that you could pay extra for, such as you could do a monorail crawl where you go to different resorts on the monorail line and have different cocktails and dining experiences. Now that's going to be a hefty price tag and it's going to be mainly for adults, but it's something fun to do if you needed a date night. While you do that, you could also drop your kids off at the Pixar Play Zone, which is a really fun kids' night out sort of experience where kids could do crafts and play games and meet some of their favorite Pixar characters. So that's a fun little option that you could add. There's also different dance parties going on with different characters that your children may be interested in. There's different boating experiences. There are different viewing experiences, like for fireworks or different shows. You can pay a little bit of extra money and have like a firework viewing dessert party at the different resorts, which can be pretty neat. Of course, you may want to add some fun things for your spouses too. So if you've had to convince them to take a Disney World vacation, maybe you could add a little extra fun for them as well. So maybe that's a round of golf, or maybe it is a charter fishing trip on one of the lakes. Maybe it could include drinking around the world, so trying different drinks at the countries around Epcot. If you got a gamer on your hands, you got some interactive games to play around the parks. There's different culinary experiences for your foodies. There's even hikes you can go on for those that are interested in keeping their physical fitness up while on vacation. There are literally hundreds of options of extra things to add to your vacation. So like I've mentioned, do your research. There's actually an 8th step I haven't included, and that is making your Fast Pass reservations. And this essentially is your ride reservations to the rides at the different theme parks. Fast Pass allows you to bypass the regular standby line and get more towards the front of the line so you get on a ride quicker. If your Disney World vacation includes a stay on one of the Disney World properties, you get to start making your Fast Pass selection 60 days in advance. If you are staying off property, you can start making your Fast Pass selections 30 days in advance. There is a lot of competition and a lot of strategy involved in making your Fast Pass selection, so I'm going to touch on that on another podcast soon. I've mentioned several times doing your research, and what I mean is do an internet search or get on Facebook and look up information about Disney World. There are so many different resources regarding tips and strategies on how to plan. I do encourage you to look at several. I'm a member of several different Disney World groups on Facebook. Some notable ones are Disney World Junkies, Disney World Mommies, Disney Foodies. So I like to stay up to date that way, but I also like to help people answer questions, and I like to get answers to my own questions. A lot of the Disney World Facebook groups that I participate in are actually Facebook pages for specific podcasts that I listen to. One of the ways that I have become knowledgeable about Disney World is just staying up to date with my podcast. So my favorite ones to listen to are going to be WDW Prep to Go with Shannon Alpert. That's probably going to be the best bet for first-time planners. I also listen to Diz Unplugged, Main Street Magic, Capture the Magic, the Mad Chatters, Ear to Their podcast, the Zad Crew, the Backside of Magic. There's a dozen others that I like to listen to. Really, if it can be played in my headphones while I'm exercising, I'm going to listen to it. I hope I've ingrained in your brain that going to Disney World without significant planning can be very detrimental to your overall quality of experience of this vacation. And frankly, you've paid too much money to have a bad time and a bad experience. That's not to say that it's not possible to go to Disney World without a plan. However, for first-timers, it's usually best when you have some strategy involved. There is a payoff to all this planning. Usually those who plan end up having a better experience. So there is a method behind the madness. And keep in mind, the more you plan now, the less you have to worry about once you arrive. In terms of this podcast, as I develop it, I will be going over individual tips, strategies, and planning advice. And I'll be digging a little bit deeper into the topics that we've already covered. And I just want to give you more information on specific things that might be fun and useful to know, and a lot of things that I wish I had known when I first started planning Disney World vacations. So look for very specific episodes in the future that goes over very specific topics. Of course, if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to drop me a line. We should be posting a link to our new website, which I'm hoping that gets done pretty soon. Also, if you are a Midwesterner and just want to hear what I have to say about another topic, you can catch me on RoadTrip Branson podcast. Well, that wraps up episode 1 of RoadTrip WDW. Tune in real soon for more tips and strategies on planning your next Disney World vacation.